Hey, I, Zach Wolf, being the computer and video techie I am, need to warn you about something. If you have a mini DV camcorder and tapes you want to archive, or some other hardware using the IEEE 1394 connector protocol, aka FireWire or iLink, such as certain audio hardware external hard drives, and want to use them on a computer without such a port, whatever you do, do not buy any FireWire to USB adapters or cables you may have spotted on Amazon or whatever. They're a scam. A really cheap scam. Often costing around $10 for each one, but still a scam. If you see them on Amazon, pay attention to the reviews and such. Many of them are negative ones. And any that appear positive might have just been planted by the manufacturers or something. And you may have seen a notification saying it's an often returned product. And for good reason. USB, whether it's 2.0 or 3.0, operates very differently from IEEE 1394 FireWire at variable data rates, compared to FireWire transferring data in a steady stream. In addition to adapters and cables going from a 6-pin FireWire 400 port to a USB 2.0 jack, I've also seen one with a 4-pin FireWire connector at one end and a USB connector on the other, clearly aimed at suckers with DV camcorders of some kind. In researching this, I read horror stories online of these phony baloney adapters and cables managing to fry a FireWire USB port or even a whole computer. And with FireWire I could kind of understand, as there could be a bit of a surge, since the 6-pin and 9-pin variety of FireWire ports also supply power, like for external hard drives and whatnot. If you're plugging such a camcorder into a computer via FireWire, it's best to have the camcorder turned off when making the connection. Then turn on the camcorder afterward. I started doing that after 5 years ago when I accidentally shorted out the DV port on an older Digital 8 camcorder similar to this model. Also at my former job with that electronics recycling and reselling company, we've gotten older DV camcorders. And so when we test them, I gave them the idea to make sure the DV FireWire port on them also gets tested to ensure someone will buy them. And I would generally do the testing on that, plugging the camcorder into one of our work computers with FireWire and playing back our test tape to see if the computer recognizes it. If it didn't work, then we'd label the camcorder as no good and send it to be recycled. Because after camcorder manufacturers discontinued tape-based mini-DV camcorders in 2011, once the newer tapeless hard drive and flash memory models finally surpassed HDV quality, the only people left buying such camcorders, largely used ones off eBay or whatever, are generally limited to those who want to play back and import their library of older DV tapes into their computers for archiving and editing and such. Same with Digital 8 camcorders like the one I showed you, for the models that could play back old Video 8 and high recordings, allowing for easy digital conversion, like I'm currently doing for my college's TV studio. And if the DV port doesn't work on them, then it's pretty much pointless. Of course, I still know others, including fellow furries, who like the retro aesthetic of mini DV and Digital 8, such as myself, which is why I brought such a camcorder to a furry meetup a while back to get some mini DV footage and edit it on one of my older FireWire-enabled Macintosh computers. But of course, while most Macs in the 2000s came with at least one FireWire port, many PCs did not, and still don't to this day. These fake FireWire to USB cables are likely aimed at PC users. If you use a PC, if it's got some kind of expansion slots, be it PCI related on a tower or a similar equivalent on a beefier laptop, you could just get a FireWire card and install that in your computer. Even back when digital video was taking off, many people who owned a mini DV or Digital 8 camcorder needed to upgrade their Windows computer to handle the footage. They'd install such a FireWire PCI or Express card in their machine. Back then, even certain makers of those PCI or FireWire cards, they'd even bundle the appropriate 4-pin to 6-pin cable, which camcorder manufacturers never included with their digital video cameras for some weird reason. and fairly basic video editing software like ULEAD's Video Studio or MGI's Video Wave. Though later on, ADS Technologies began bundling the more mid-range Adobe Premiere Elements software with their FireWire hardware. And of course, Pinnacle Systems would include their studio software with their PCI FireWire analog capture cards. Heck, even Sony distributed Pinnacle's PCI FireWire card studio software under their own name, being one of the top camcorder manufacturers. But suppose you have a computer that doesn't offer PCI slots or a similar card expansion slot, like certain laptops or all-in-one desktops. There are currently a few options for you to consider without having to resort to a professional service to transfer your DV or digital 8 tapes to video files. One is if you're running a computer that doesn't have FireWire but does have Thunderbolt. From 2012 until last year, Apple actually made a FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter. It's a 9-pin FireWire 800 plug though, so you'd probably need a 4-pin to 9-pin cable to hook up your digital camcorder to the computer. Of course, being co-developed by Apple, Thunderbolt transfers data in a steady continuous stream, allowing for backwards compatibility with FireWire. The other end goes into a Thunderbolt 1 or 2 connection, using the same port style as mini display. As such, you have to make sure it's a Thunderbolt port and not a mini display port. Macs began incorporating Thunderbolt technology in 2011. And currently all Macs on the market have at least a couple Thunderbolt ports, and some modern high-end Windows PCs do as well. But the thing is, Thunderbolt 3 onwards uses the same port and protocol as USB-C. As such, it's also backwards compatible with USB-C devices, but not the other way around. So, you would daisy chain Apple's FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter to their Thunderbolt 2 to 3 adapter here. It really works, and I'm currently using this when working at my college's TV studio, digitizing their Video 8 high-A tape archives with my digital 8 camcorder on their new Apple Silicon iMacs. Again, while you can plug a USB-C device into a Thunderbolt 3 or greater port, it doesn't work the other way around. This FireWire to Thunderbolt daisy chain will not work in a regular USB-C port. To make sure it's actually a Thunderbolt 3 port or greater, you need to look for the little lightning-shaped arrow icon alongside the port on both Macs and PCs. Also, another problem is that as of last year, Apple discontinued a bunch of their accessories and cables still using older peripheral standards, including the FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter, because it used a Thunderbolt 2 connection. And if you're going to get one, be it new, old stock, or used one, I'm warning you right now that there are scalpers online selling them for higher prices than they originally sold at, often around $100 or something. Sheesh! But if you look around, you could get a used or even new FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter for much less than that, like around the original retail price of $30. So until some company makes an actual FireWire to Thunderbolt 3 adapter, that's your option. Alternatively, if you have a computer with a Thunderbolt 3 or greater port, OWC makes a Thunderbolt 3 dock that includes a 9-pin FireWire port alongside other useful ports. But that's a more expensive option, costing around $270. But you get the added benefit of extra USB-A style ports and gigabit Ethernet, and an SD card slot and an analog audio in jack. So those are your options if you're using a modern Mac, especially an Apple Silicon model. In a similar case, Apple's 27-inch Thunderbolt display they made from 2011 to 2016 could also do such a conversion, with a 9-pin FireWire port on the back. I currently use such a Thunderbolt display when I want to use my M1 MacBook Air in clamshell mode, or with another one of my older Thunderbolt equipped Macs or whatnot. But what if you're running a Windows PC that has no Thunderbolt ports or any expansion slots? Well, there is a safe and genuine way to perform a FireWire to USB 2 TV streaming capture. In the 2000s, a couple companies actually made USB 2 analog to digital video converter boxes that could also perform a DV FireWire to USB conversion for you, even allowing device control on some models. This means you can control the playback of your digital video device from the computer's capture or edit software. It's a really cool concept. As I talked about in a previous vlog, Pinnacle Systems made a few such movie box capture devices capable of this. Like this one, the 710 USB they made from 2006 and 2012. Now look at that, a 6-pin FireWire port. And the package even included a 4-pin to 6-pin cable to use with your DV or digital A camcorder. This will not work with external hard drives or digital audio interfaces, just FireWire video devices like DV camcorders. But forget those fake cables and adapters I showed you. This is a real FireWire to USB conversion process, with this movie box having the ability and circuitry to perform such a task inside, compared to the fake cables just being a few wires stranded together. In my early days of using a DV camcorder in my late teens, it provided a nice stopgap solution for me before we put an actual PCI FireWire card in the Dell tower me and my brother were using. And this FireWire to USB DV conversion even works with other video editing applications that support DV capture. Thanks to that Pinnacle movie box, I can even capture such digital video into a Windows XP virtual machine in Parallels desktop with no frame dropping or whatever. Is that impressive or what? In addition to the 710 here, Pinnacle also sold a slightly cheaper 510 USB, also including a FireWire to USB digital video conversion. Also along with their predecessors, the 500 USB and 700 USB. In addition to the USB hardware there and the PCI cards, from 2002 to 2005, Pinnacle Systems actually did make a FireWire version of their movie box for performing such an analog to digital conversion to go directly into a computer's FireWire port, even the Mac, resulting in higher quality video than the early USB-only movie box devices at the time. This is what my college used to use for such analog to digital video jobs before switching to Thunderbolt. And if you were going to use the included Pinnacle Studio software or whatever reason, you'd need a pretty beefy PC to run it, the way I did. But to use the USB 2.0 movie box like this, no matter what video capture software you're using, don't forget to download and install the needed Windows drivers. A link is provided in the video description. Go with the Windows Vista or 764-bit drivers if you're running Windows 8 or newer. They work just fine, even Windows 10 and 11. But like Apple's FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter, they're not being made anymore. It happened when Corel, now known as All You Do, bought Pinnacle Systems from Avid in 2012 and drastically downsized their video capture hardware to a single USB Dazzle video creator device that only supports analog input. It was the end of an era. But on eBay or Amazon, you may find some used or new old stock movie box devices like this you could buy, and in many cases they're cheaper than when they were originally made. Similarly, ADS Technologies, one of the aforementioned PCI FireWire card manufacturers, even made a couple of their own USB 2 analog video capture boxes that could perform a similar FireWire to USB DV conversion, like the ADS Technologies DVD and DV capture box. But they would use a 4-pin FireWire port, meaning you need a 4-pin to 4-pin FireWire cable. And I recall it only worked in Windows XP in the included software, namely ADS's Capture Wizard and the bundled ULEAD software. So you'll probably be better off with the Pinnacle USB 2 movie box devices if you plan to use them with modern Windows versions. Or if you're like me and you like to collect older computers, if you get an older Mac model with a FireWire port built in like this, you can use that to capture and possibly edit your video footage. Or at least only use the older Mac for the capturing and then move your imported video into the newer made computer for editing. I have a bunch of older Macs in my collection and most of them are FireWire equipped. But of course, it also depends on the operating system and software installed. Unless you feel like editing on an older application just for a fun little throwback like I do once in a while. But to conclude this, those are your options for using FireWire hardware, especially DV or digital A camcorders with modern computers. I repeat, do not buy one of those so-called FireWire to USB adapters or cables you see online. It's just a scam, and it can fry your FireWire or USB devices, or even worse, damage your computer. Stick with the safer alternatives I described, even if it costs more. Be it the Apple to FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter daisy chain, a Thunderbolt dock of some kind of a FireWire port, a PCI or Express card FireWire expansion, or one of those Pinnacle Movie Box USB 2 devices I showed you. Maybe if we keep using these, some manufacturers will catch on and either start making a newer FireWire to Thunderbolt 3 or greater adapter, or even a newer video capture device similar to the Movie Box. This is a great product, and All You Do killed it when they bought Pinnacle Systems. What a shame. Along with Apple discontinuing their FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter. But at least the options I gave you likely saved you the trouble of having to buy one of those phony FireWire to USB cables or adapters. Yeah, I was thinking of buying one just for actually showing off in this video, not actually using and risking damaging my equipment. But I figured the $10 would be better spent elsewhere. And it's like they say, you get what you pay for, and cheaper isn't always better. Anyways, I hope you found my advice useful. Stay tuned to this channel if you want to hear anything else like that from me.